thank you very much for joining us, and this stage is yours now.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Hello, everyone, and firstly, my apologies for not being with you today in person. We've just concluded a record-breaking Rugby World Cup Sevens tournament in Cape Town, and unfortunately, I was not able to make it back in time to be there. However, I am delighted to be sharing with you all virtually my perspective on the subject of trust, of governance and of integrity, and why it's more important than ever in the future growth of sports and certainly in the sport of rugby. I'm sure we'll have incredible stories to tell of the global COVID pandemic and how it exposed our vulnerabilities, heightened our challenges, and shaped our thinking. More than any event in modern history, it exposed social imbalances and made us second guess our politicians and question our accepted norms in sport. And I think it highlighted as never before the importance of trust and the fragile relationship between authority and society. Trust is not a given. It's shaped by events and by actions and determined by a new generation of influencers beyond the traditional media lens. Business, retail, entertainment, and certainly sport are all obsessed with Gen Z, and understandably so, because from a sporting perspective, these are our future consumers, our future participants, and of course, our future fans. And the influencers of that next generation that will follow them, Generation Alpha, they have, more so than any other generation, an innate tendency to do their own research, most of them using smartphones for between 4 and 5 hours a day. And their reliance on that technology has made them natural investigators. So anyone who wishes to earn their trust must prove that they are worth trusting. No fudging, just objective facts laid bare for those Generation Z influencers. So what does that mean for sports governance? At World Rugby, we talk often about placing fans and players, our family, at the heart of everything we do. We know we have to be authentic, empathetic, action-oriented, and purpose-driven to earn the permission we need to grow the game and in order to build and preserve trust. In really practical terms, that means we have to show authentic leadership. We have to ensure that our objectives are transparent, our decision-making is transparent, and that we put considerations such as player welfare advancements at the forefront of everything we do. And it means we have to take a stand on the issues that are important to that new generation of fans, particularly around diversity, inclusivity, and environmental sustainability. And putting in place the processes that enable fans to believe in what they see on the field of play, that is ultimately where we have to earn trust. Integrity is the foundation of sport. The key value of fair play on and off the field of play is what makes sport credible, believable, accessible, and relevant. Starting with governance, we've recently transformed our structures to better represent a global, growing, and diverse sport, including increasing female representation to 40% across our committees and decision-making structures, and of course seeking to push that further towards gender equality, and focusing on regional, player, and independent representation to broaden our capability and our authenticity, and certainly putting the athlete and player voice at the heart of all we do is again incredibly important to a new generation of fans. We've adopted a new integrity code within World Rugby and appointed our first independent ethics officer to ensure that our committee and board structures continue to be fit for purpose and that we're held to account in all of our decision making. We're also having a very open dialogue with our fans, our playing community, and everyone in the rugby community about what the future of their sport looks like and how best to preserve, enhance, and celebrate the values of our sport. On the field, using this weekend's Rugby World Cup Sevens event as an example, we run mandatory education programs for all participants in the area of integrity. And while much of what we do there is online, those face-to-face interactions are critical to the education and to building trust and a safe space for our participants to speak out where they feel there are concerns. And collaboration across different sports is also vital. We're proud of the work that we do with the IOC, with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, and with other organisations to support and promote the excellent resources and information that's available in this space. Sport by definition is plural, I'm a big believer in open engagement, in listening and acting, and we as sports are not alone. We need to work together, share information, listen to our participants and be aware of the changes and challenges in our world to maintain the trust in the purity of the sports arena. And we need to be mindful that the members of that Gen Z generation are not only inheriting a new world, they're inheriting its challenges. This awareness elevates the challenges that sports must overcome to prove themselves and earn that crucial trust. And it should. Not a single fan, participant or stakeholder should be taken for granted. And that's why a forum such as the one you're all part of today is so important, and why World Rugby is delighted to be participating and as always, to be partnering with SIGA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well-deserved applause.
Alan, thank you for joining us remotely and making this conversation possible. Possibly like a few of you here, I was not originally a spontaneous fan of rugby, although the size of my shoulders may indicate otherwise. In fact, the true expert in SIGA about rugby is Katie Simmons, our Global Chief Operating Officer. But no doubt that when we talk about rugby, we talk about a big sport. When we talk about World Rugby, we talk about one of the most prestigious, well-governed international sports federations. And no doubt, behind the scenes, a lot of progress has been made throughout the years. And the man responsible for this in previous roles and now with the highest responsibility of leading the way forward as CEO is Alan Gilpin. Alan, who has been with SIGA, I must say, right from the start. Right from the first conversations I had with global sports leaders, World Rugby was a lighthouse in terms of governance. And the contribution of rugby to the governance of sport, to the progress of sport, to the financial sustainability of sport has been paramount. I want to take this opportunity to pay publicly my respects and express my gratitude for that. But it's no doubt a great year that we have ahead. 2023 will be the year of the World Cup, played in France. It will attract, no doubt, the attention of the world, the attention of the media, the attention and the buzz and the excitement of the sponsorship industry, and of course, the fans. I expect to be there. So, Alan, if you can still hear me, give us some heads up. Share with us what we can expect from the World Cup in 2013, the global appeal, the excitement, the build-up, and what is the legacy that through this World Cup, World Rugby intends to leave behind.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Listen, great to see you. And again, apologies, I'm not there on stage with you in person. I would have loved to have been there. And thanks for those incredibly kind words in relation to rugby and to World Rugby. Yes, it's an exciting time. We've just completed, as I mentioned, the shortest World Cup we hold, which is the Rugby World Cup Sevens, 3 days in Cape Town. Wonderful Sevens rugby champions in the men's in Fiji and the women's in Australia. Fantastic tournament, 120,000 fans in Cape Town Stadium over 3 days. So we're delighted with that one. We're less than a month away from a Women's Rugby World Cup that would originally have been last year in 2021, now being played in October and into November this year in Auckland in New Zealand. So at a really important time for the women's game for us, and a lot of investment in women's rugby, a huge growth opportunity. And as you mentioned, now just under a year away from the start of our Men's Rugby World Cup, which begins on September the 8th in Paris and takes place all across France over 7 weeks, next September and October. Our biggest and best Rugby World Cup to date. I know everyone always says that about every event that's coming up. We've got more than 2 million tickets already sold for that event. There's actually another 200,000 tickets on sale this week. Whenever they've been on sale, they disappear in minutes, not even hours. So we know there's huge anticipation, in France and more widely in the sort of global rugby audience. So that's really exciting. We've got 20 men's teams playing in that tournament, 19 of which are qualified, one more to come through a final qualification tournament taking place this November. And actually, and again, I know it's a much used phrase, but probably looking at our most competitive Rugby World Cup ever. For any of you who follow rugby, you'll see that we're in a situation where the top of our rankings are actually the most competitive they've been, world rankings, since they started in 2003. There's 5 or 6 teams certainly capable of beating each other at the top end of those rankings on any given day. And actually throughout that whole group of teams that are qualified, there's huge competitiveness. So a really exciting period and really important for us because, like so many of you in the room, you know, rugby had a really tough time during the global pandemic. We were very lucky to have had our last global event in Japan just before the world changed, and that was important for us in how we've been able to support our own membership and stakeholders through really challenging times. So 2023 will be another fantastic tournament and another opportunity for us to use a really pinnacle global event to grow the game. And that's what this is all about for us, is about growing our sport, not just in new participants, but in new audiences. And as I mentioned just now, you know, a huge part of that is about earning trust, making sure what people see on the field of play is believable, but also making sure the work that we do outside of those white lines is also credible and believable, and that people can believe in our sport and integrity and governance. And I think the changes that we've made recently in that space are going to be really important as part of that legacy.
That's really important, and no doubt I, like everybody else here, is really excited and counting the time for that great momentum of sport. And I do hope that things go well, because it's in the little secrets that we can find the difference. The difference between success and insuccess, between a great experience and a traumatic one. And speaking about Paris, I can hardly forget the last experience I had there during the UEFA Champions League final. So I do hope that everything will be on the clock, efficiently, with the stamp of excellence of World Rugby. I have no doubt about that. But because excellence is something that cannot be proclaimed, it needs to be earned and it needs to be acknowledged. Tell us what led you to assume the leadership in having your own integrity code. How important it is, inspiring not just the way the league is run and the different clubs and different athletes participate in your competitions, but what has been also the concerns that led you to give that step forward, and now, which will continue with the adoption of the SIGA Universal Standards and the SIGA rating system?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, you know, we are and we market and position ourselves as a values-led sport and a values-led organisation. We believe that we have some great values that differentiate us from others, and I think if you're going to talk that talk, you've got to walk that walk. We've had, as all organisations have, challenges in the past, you know, with matters around integrity, whether they be governance issues, individuals in decision-making positions, you know, not necessarily upholding the standards that we'd all expect and require. So again, we took the opportunity, I think, during the pause that COVID gave us all from the frenetic activity we're normally in, to say we need to stand back from this. We appointed an independent chair of a governance working group, and we really took our own regulatory framework apart. We consulted really widely across our whole membership, and including with international rugby players, our International Players Association, to understand where best practice really is in this space. And we engaged some experts to advise on that from different sports, and to understand where maybe we need to improve our own structures. So that led to the adoption of some really best practice fit and proper person tests, best practice policies around conflict of interest management, which again, very challenging in a stakeholder and membership-based sporting organisation, as will be true for many in the room, and appointed a third party to conduct independent best practice vetting of everybody across all of our committees and board structures, to make sure again that fit and proper person test and policy isn't just something in black and white, but something that lives and breathes. So everybody in our structures goes through a third-party independent vetting process, and ultimately, and fairly recently, we've recruited and now appointed an independent ethics officer, so that again, when it comes to trust, our rugby community, our fans, our players, and those involved in the sport can really believe that those decisions around whether or not the people involved in our structures and the decisions that are made are good enough, that can be referred outside of our structures and looked at independently. And I think that's a really important part of the approach we're taking.
Yeah, I think it's also fair to say that one of the reasons for your commercial success and the global appeal is the fact that sponsors and broadcasters, they acknowledge the significance you attach to good governance and integrity, and not just to declaring it, but to showing it. Am I correct?
Absolutely. No, and I think that we're lucky to work with a great group of commercial partners and media partners, many of whom have been with us for a long time. I mean, I know Mike and Alison from MasterCard are there with you today, have been huge supporters of rugby globally, huge supporters of ours. And those partners are entitled to hold us to account and to expect that, we are putting in place best practice governance structures, and that we're continually reviewing them. I think that's always an important part as well. It's not good enough to have, a governance review on a periodic basis. This now needs to be an ongoing conversation that we have, not just, with ourselves internally, but exactly that with our partners and stakeholders.
Well, I am certain that our friends from BSI who have been here with us and walking the walk with us throughout this journey are paying attention to what you just said. We will be talking soon. One final question. It's about the financial sustainability, which I think is paramount in sport. And often we see sports going through these spiraling inflation in terms of players' wages, agents' commissions, transfer fees, and no doubt sometimes we wonder, where is the limit? How far and how deep can financial distress go? Especially in times like this, where the world was shaken up by this global pandemic and hit immediately with an economic, a financial crisis, not to mention the crisis of trust and confidence. But you have been one of the early adopters of a salary cap. Can you explain me, all these years after, what is the state of the art? How important it was to ensure that the World Rugby would remain in the right path, that you would live within your means, achieving success on the pitch, achieving great recognition worldwide, but also making sure that there is level playing field and there is balance in terms of expenditure and income.
Look, it's certainly a challenging area, Emmanuel, as you know very well firsthand from football. And I think in rugby, look, there remain challenges. The pandemic again, caused huge financial distress across the sport. A number of our professional leagues, and rugby's a relatively young professional sport compared to others, and certainly compared in European terms to football. So there's been the opportunity to learn, I guess, from other sports, but there are still challenges. The salary caps that exist across our professional leagues in different parts of the world are varied. Probably the enforcement of those salary caps in the past has been varied too, and there's a huge amount of work still going on to make sure that competitive balance can be achieved, that players who put their bodies on the line across the men's and women's game can earn a fair salary and make a career out of playing our sport. So there's a lot of work, particularly again in the even younger professional version of the women's game in this space to do. But I think, again, it's such an important part of being a well-governed and well-structured sport that provides the right opportunity for players and for young boys and girls who have that aspiration to be professional athletes, but also, again, for fans to be able to believe in the quality of the product and in what they see on the field as part of that broader approach to integrity. So we're not perfect as a sport, that's for sure. There's a lot of work to do and a long way to go, and COVID has certainly made a lot of that harder, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Final question from me, Alan, and that's going to be a quick one. We are in the middle, I would say even the beginning of a very turbulent decade. a decade whose events, which continue to unfold in an unpredictable manner, no one could have foreseen. But looking ahead, which is the most important thing, not looking backwards, not looking to the rear mirror, but looking ahead, straight forward, SIGA. Where will be World Rugby in 2030? What is the vision that you are aiming for? What can we, the fans, the business community, the global ship community, all those who love the sport, and in that roughness, we see also the ability to strive, to prevail, to overcome, work as a team to achieve a multiple goal. 2013, World Rugby, what can we expect?
I think the vision, is clear for us, which is a thriving, growing sport that's ever more global. We know the women's game is an amazing opportunity for us to grow, and we're investing significantly in that. And really, that's a huge part of our strategic approach for the next decade. Again, we know these big pinnacle events, whether it's Rugby World Cups, whether it's Rugby Sevens in the Olympic Games, are big moments that drive attention and increase both fandom and participation, and that's important. And I think ultimately, and again, this is not so much about rugby, but sport more generally, the competition often, I think erroneously think, is between us as sports. And actually, I think the opportunity is for sports to come together more, work together more, share experiences and best practice more, because actually what we're all doing is competing for people's time and attention and competing to be relevant to young audiences. And we want young people to play sport. We want young people to benefit from not just the mental and physical well-being that they get from that immediately, but the life skills and the teamwork and the respect that they learn from sport. And I think sport plays a role like nothing else in what is an ever faster moving society, which, as you mentioned, is going to face some really big challenges in the next period. So I think the importance of sport to all of that is paramount, and we need to work together to drive that.
Well, that was the perfect way to answer the question, and also a perfect way to close this first part of the day, I believe. For those who wish to continue this food for thought, for those who continue to be in the path of change and innovation and reform, we have so much more coming up. Thank you, Alan, for your contribution. Well done, and good luck.
Thanks, Emmanuel. It's good to see you all.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you to all of you in this room. Words cannot describe the appreciation. Your presence speaks for itself. It's a statement of interest, a statement of commitment, a statement that you want to be the leader that exists in each one of you. And that for us is extremely rewarding, extremely encouraging, because we could not do this without you. You, those who are here, the hundreds and thousands of people who have been sending me messages all the morning and yesterday, those who are in their homes, those who are in their jobs, a few who were even in their cars, stopped not driving at the same time. We need you. Because if there is something that defines sport, is that sport belongs to no one. It's not a feud. It's not a monopoly. It's not that can be exclusive for anyone. Sport belongs to each one of us, and that is why there are no monopolies in the field of sport integrity. So give a step forward. Make your voice heard. Stand with SIGA and seize this Sport Integrity Week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel.